Have you ever had that really specific sinking feeling in the back of your mind?
Oh, the one where you just know a deadline is looming.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're staring down this massive immovable deadline and you just know deep down that you are hopelessly falling behind.
Right. It's that terrifying realization that the math just doesn't work out anymore.
Totally.
But when you strip away the highly specific context of, high school hallways and senior superlatives, what you're actually left with is a literal masterclass in crisis project management.
It really is.
Because the anatomy of a time crunch is universal. It doesn't matter if you're publishing a book or launching a tech startup or even just trying to finish a kitchen renovation before the holidays. The panic is the same.
And that universal panic is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive today. We're looking at how to rescue a project when the time crunch really hits.
The survival guide.
Exactly. Our source material today is this highly practical guide published by United Yearbook. It's titled, very straightforwardly, What to Do If You're Behind on Your Yearbook Deadline.
No ambiguity there.
None at all. And it's aimed directly at these teams who have just hit a wall in the second half of the school year. They have some pages coming together, maybe a few folders full of random photos.
But the absolute final submission dates are just staring them in the face.
Right. They are looming way too close for comfort.
So our mission today is to extract the underlying framework from this document.
Yes, the core mechanics of it.
Right. While the guide is talking about yearbooks and photo submissions, we want to figure out how to turn sheer, unadulterated project panic into a calm, clear plan of attack.
Which is something I think everyone listening could use a little help with.
Definitely. Because the strategies they outline for getting that book to the printer on time, they map perfectly onto the cognitive and operational bottlenecks that we all face when the clock is running out.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before you can actually start working faster, you have to know what you're supposed to be working on.
Right, you have to point the ship in the right direction.
Yeah. When you realize you're dangerously behind, I feel like the natural human instinct is to either freeze entirely or, and I'm definitely guilty of this, just start frantically working on a random easy tasks.
Oh, the illusion of productivity.
Exactly, just so you can feel like you're doing something. But the guide argues that you have to forcefully stop the bleeding through, basically aggressive triage.
And that triage requires a brutal level of honesty.
Yeah. You have to admit that not all tasks carry the same weight anymore. You just can't treat them as if they do.
The source is very explicit about this. They mandate focusing solely on the content that holds the absolute most value for the end users.
Which in this case would be the students and the families.
Exactly. They provide a very strict hierarchy of what constitutes an essential page. It's student life, sports, clubs and organizations, portrait pages, senior recognition, and graduation-related content.
So just the heavy hitters.
Right. They clearly state that these core coverage pages must absolutely come first, period. Future pages can be simplified, but the core is non-negotiable.
But wait, hold on. If we just focus on the basic portraits and the sports summaries, aren't we kind of killing the creative soul of the project?
How do you mean?
Well, I look at yearbooks, and the unique, highly designed feature pages, like the pop culture recaps or those funny superintendent polls, that's the fun part.
There's the flashy stuff.
Yeah. Won't the community be incredibly disappointed if we just abandon all that creative ambition just to churn out the basic, boring coverage pages?
I get that. But that anxiety you're describing, that fear of abandoning the creative vision, is actually the exact cognitive trap that causes delayed projects to fail completely.
Wait, really? A cognitive trap?
Yeah. It's rooted in a behavioral economics concept called loss aversion.
Oh, okay. Like we don't want to lose what we've already started.
Exactly. We don't want to lose those fun feature pages we already spent hours brainstorming, so we myth-allocate our rapidly shrinking time trying to save them.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
But you have to look at the primary utility of the product. Decades from now, the yearbook serves as a historical record, right? It's an emotional anchor for these families.
Right, they want to see their kids.
Yes. If a clever, highly designed page about the year's top movies is missing, it's a slight disappointment. But if the senior portraits or the graduation pages are missing...
Oh, that's a disaster. The parents would riot.
Exactly. The product has fundamentally failed its primary reason for existing.
It's like packing for a last-minute flight.
Ooh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, imagine your cab to the airport is literally honking outside. You are frantically throwing things into a suitcase.
Panic packing.
Total panic packing. You absolutely must pack your passport, your medications, and clean clothes first. You just cannot waste 10 precious minutes agonizing over whether to bring, I don't know, your favorite fancy hats.
Right, because if you focus on the hats, you forget the passport, and you miss the flight entirely.
Exactly. The coverage pages, the portraits, the clubs, those are the passport.
And taking that analogy just a step further, if you pack the passport first, you've guaranteed that the journey can at least happen.
Yeah, you're getting on the plane.
The source text explicitly gives teams permission to simplify those feature pages, but only after the core coverage is secured. You secure the non-negotiable foundation first.
So, okay, you've packed the passport, the foundation is identified, but just knowing what to prioritize doesn't actually make the work disappear. The sheer volume of that newly triaged list can still cause total paralysis.
Oh, absolutely. It's still a mountain.
Right? You look at the list, all the sports, all the clubs, hundreds of portraits, and it's still terrifying. How do you structure the remaining time so the team actually starts climbing that mountain?
Well, this is where we have to look at the psychology of time blindness. Staring down one massive, terrifying final date that's, say, 3 weeks away is a recipe for disaster.
Because it just feels too big.
Exactly. The source advises a radical restructuring of the timeline. You have to break the remaining work down into hyper-specific micro deadlines.
And their examples from the text are incredibly micro. They don't just say, finish the book by next month.
No, not at all.
They break it down to things like finishing the sports section today, completing the student life pages by Wednesday, finalizing captions and portraits by Friday.
It's very immediate.
It is. But I have to ask, does slicing up the timeline like this actually save us any time? Or is it just a psychological trick to make us feel better about being behind? Because the total number of pages hasn't actually changed.
What's fascinating here is that the psychological trick is precisely what alters the speed of the work.
Really?
Yeah. When you have a massive, singular deadline, you fall victim to something called the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yes. It's a psychological principle that says uncompleted massive tasks take up an enormous amount of active cognitive bandwidth.
Oh, like a background process running on a computer.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Your brain keeps that massive finish the entire book loop running constantly, which creates overwhelming anxiety and totally drains the energy you need to actually do the work.
So it's like trying to run a marathon by staring at the finish line 26 miles away instead of just looking at the next lamppost.
That's a perfect comparison.
It's like trying to download a massive, 100 gigabyte file on a terrible Wi-Fi connection. If you try to force the whole thing at once, the system overheats, it times out, and it crashes, you get nothing.
Right, the connection just dropped.
But slicing the timeline up is like configuring the system to download the file packet by packet. You bypass the system crash entirely.
That is exactly the mechanism at play, and by breaking it into packets, you're also weaponizing Parkinson's law.
Remind me what that one is.
That's the law stating that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
Oh, right.
If you give a team 3 weeks to finish the sports section, they'll overthink it, and it takes 3 weeks. But if you give them until today, as the guide suggests,
They just have to get it done.
they strip away the overthinking and they execute. Furthermore, hitting that daily micro deadline like finishing sports by 5:00 p.m. delivers a tangible hit of dopamine.
A lot of reward for the brain.
Exactly. The source emphasizes this because the motivation engine of any team runs on visible progress. You shift the team's mental state from feeling crushed by a disaster to feeling empowered by a continuous streak of small, measurable wins.
Okay, so the team is energized now. The packets are downloading. They're hitting their micro deadlines, churning through sports today and student life by Wednesday.
The momentum is there.
Right. But because they're operating at this highly accelerated pace, I imagine a new threat emerges. If they try to execute their original, highly complex design visions in just a fraction of the time, well, the result is going to be incredibly sloppy.
It absolutely will be. And
Yeah.
the guide makes a very clear, assertive pivot here regarding quality control under pressure.
What do they suggest?
They state that when time is tight, it is entirely acceptable and even necessary To simplify the layouts, you have to strip the design down to its absolute essentials.
Yeah, they boil a layout down to just 4 specific elements. Just 4 things you need to worry about: strong photos, clear headlines, well-written captions, and consistent fonts.
That is it.
That's the whole list. And they include a golden rule that I think applies to almost any industry. Simple does not mean boring. It means clean, clear, and polished.
Which goes against a very dangerous myth in project management.
The myth that more is better.
Exactly. The myth that complexity inherently equals quality. We naturally assume that if something has more moving parts, it must be more valuable. But the source recognizes that executed simplicity vastly outperforms rushed complexity.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about visual design like going to a restaurant.
Okay, I'm listening.
A rushed, highly complicated layout is basically a botched 5-course meal. Imagine the chef trying to execute a foam, a wine reduction, a sous vide, and a flambe all in 10 minutes because they're behind on tickets.
That sounds like a nightmare for the kitchen.
And for the customer. The result on the plate is going to be this chaotic, messy, unappetizing disaster.
Yeah, nobody wants to eat that.
But a perfectly executed, simple smash burger, just meat, cheese, bun, that simple burger is going to be deeply satisfying every single time.
Always hits the spot.
Those 4 fundamentals from the text, the photos, headlines, captions, and fonts, that is the perfect burger.
I love that. And from a cognitive processing standpoint, that perfect burger removes visual friction.
Visual fiction.
Yeah, the source warns that complicated layouts that feel rushed or unfinished are actively detrimental to the reader. When the human eye scans a page, it's naturally looking for patterns and alignment.
Right, our brains like order.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you have 7 different overlapping design elements, like drop shadows, complex text wraps, layered graphics, but the alignment is off by just a few pixels because the designer was rushing,
The brain spots it immediately.
it registers as an error.
It screams to the reader, "We ran out of time and panicked."
Exactly. It creates cognitive friction.
Right.
The reader stops looking at the content and starts looking at the mistakes. But by leaning defensively on those 4 basic fundamentals, you remove the opportunity for those chaotic errors to even exist in the first place.
Because there are fewer things to mess up.
Precisely. Consistent fonts and clear headlines create immediate visual harmony. The final product looks highly intentional and professional. You're essentially masking the lack of time through the power of extreme polish.
Okay, so we've got the triage done, the micro deadlines are driving the momentum, and the simplified designs are removing errors.
The machine is running.
But even with this perfect roadmap, the entire system is still going to crash if the human element, the team dynamic, is a free-for-all.
Oh, without a doubt.
To execute this simplified, high-speed plan, the way the team actually interacts has to radically shift.
Which brings us to a stark warning, the guide issues about resource allocation.
Yeah, they talk about dividing responsibility.
Very clearly. The text contains this brilliantly blunt observation. When everyone is responsible for everything, pages often don't get finished.
That line really jumped out at me. They're demanding incredibly specific siloed roles. They ask the reader to define exactly who is reviewing the captions, who is finalizing the pages, who is proofreading the student names.
You have to assign actual names to those specific tasks.
But wait, I have a pushback here. Isn't a project like a yearbook fundamentally supposed to be highly collaborative?
Usually, yes.
If we throw out the everyone pitches in and helps mindset just to save time, don't we ruin the team's spirit? Shouldn't a crisis mean everyone jumps in on whatever task is in front of them?
It's a fair question. But while a highly matrixed collaborative approach is fantastic during the early brainstorming phases, it is actually toxic during a time crunch.
Toxic, really?
Yes. Relying on an everyone pitches in mentality when the clock is ticking triggers a well-documented behavioral phenomenon. It's known as the diffusion of responsibility, which is often related to the bystander effect.
Ah, okay, so everyone just assumes someone else is holding the ball.
Exactly. And when the ball drops, the blame is equally diluted.
Right.
If 5 people are supposedly collaborating on proofreading the senior names, the mathematical reality is that each person subconsciously feels only 20% accountable.
Person A assumes person B is checking the spelling.
And person B assumes person C already did it. In the end, the page goes to print with the class president's name spelled incorrectly, because shared responsibility in a frantic environment usually results in zero accountability.
That is terrifying. So the chain of command has to be absolute.
The source emphasizes dividing responsibilities to remove all ambiguity at the 11th hour. If a team member knows they are the sole, singular person responsible for finalizing captions today, they aren't waiting for a consensus.
They're just doing it.
They aren't checking to see if someone else is going to do it. The work moves efficiently and aggressively because the cognitive overhead of coordinating with a group has been eliminated completely.
So internal clarity is what really saves the day here.
Definitely.
Now, let's assume the internal team is locked in. The roles are defined, the designs are clean, the micro deadlines are being crushed. We still have to address the massive elephant in the room,
The drop-dead date.
the immovable publishing deadline itself. You can perfect your internal workflow all you want, but if the clock strikes midnight, you are still facing the consequences.
Which is why the guide's final piece of advice addresses the relationship with the ultimate authority figure in this scenario, the publisher.
Yeah, they stress the critical importance of communicating with your publisher early.
Very early.
The source gets very specific about what the publisher can actually do to help if you simply reach out. They note that the publisher can often adjust your timeline, review pages that are currently in progress, help you prioritize what needs to be completed first, and actively guide the team to stay on track.
They have levers they can pull that you don't even know about.
Right. And I want to explicitly mention the source of this advice again because they are clearly putting their money where their mouth is. United Yearbook wrote this guide, and they state their ultimate goal is to support advisors and students to complete the book with pride.
They really want you to succeed.
They even put their direct contact info right in the text for teams in trouble. It says you can email them at info@unitedyearbook.net or call their toll-free number at 1-877-33-yearbook. And they even include an international number, 909-373-4087. They are quite literally waiting for the SOS call.
They're positioning themselves as a strategic partner rather than, an adversary just waiting to penalize a late submission.